Hello and welcome. Don't look at my really dirty kitchen table. Welcome to the very beginning of my Contemporary-A-Thon vlog. Today is day one and I just started reading my first book. I'm currently cooking dinner. I'm kind of like going back and forth with that because I put my Tome Infinity read down for a minute. I'm hopefully gonna finish that later on tonight because I might look familiar if you've watched my Tome Infinity and Beyond vlog because the things are overlapping by a couple of days, and so since they're overlapping, here we are. So I started with Turtles All the Way Down by John Green, and I am like 3 chapters in and I'm enjoying it. I don't really have like a great sense of what the story is going to be like, but it just is reminding me how much I really enjoy John Green's writing, so there's that. I've already changed my TBR for this, so that's cool, and I'll just kind of talk about that like as I get to it and then, you know, like wrap it up at the end and stuff. So okay, I have, I think, 4 books. Yeah, I have 4 books on this TBR because there's no way that I would be able to read 7 like the people that do. Like, y'all are the real MVPs because your girl cannot. And okay, so I just, you know, wanted to say hello and check in and all that good stuff. And I'm gonna try and vlog, but I'm like working and stuff, so vlog clips are probably gonna be boring as hell. So that's a thing. And yeah, so welcome to the vlog, and I will check in with you guys in a little bit. Hi, hello. It is day 2 of Contemporary-A-Thon, and I worked all day today, but I am off tomorrow. But even though I did work all day today, I did finish my first book for Contemporary-A-Thon, and that book is Turtles All the Way Down by John Green, and it is over there on the bookshelf, so I do not feel like going to get it, but I am going to talk about it. So I gave it 4 stars. So it was the book for the challenge, orange on the cover, and you know, read like a 5-star prediction or whatever. And so it wasn't quite 5 stars. There are a couple different reasons for that, but basically this book is about a teenager, and she lives with like OCD and intrusive thoughts and things like that. And we all know that John Green is particularly adept at writing love stories. And while I liked that there was like a somewhat romantic element within this book, it did not overtake the story. And then the core of the story was about Aza and her OCD and living with that and really what that looks like for her. I could really tell that, you know, one of the reasons that it took John Green so long to write this book is because he really did want to get it right. I do not personally have OCD, so I cannot speak to, you know, that particular representation. I will say that as someone who deals with anxiety and who sometimes can really deal with like thought spirals, you know, where it's like one thought gets in your head and you obsess about it and you just like spiral further and further downward until it, you know, can really lead you into a full-on anxiety attack or sometimes even a panic attack. You know, I've experienced that more than I would care to admit, and so that piece of it did feel extremely authentic to me. I thought that it was a really good representation, and it was the first time that I've ever actually read that in a book, and so that aspect of it I really did enjoy. And I posted, or I didn't post to Twitter, but I had somebody comment on, you know, whenever I updated it on Goodreads, somebody was like, oh, you know, like, hey, how are you liking that? And I was like, you know, I definitely have feelings about it. They were like, I couldn't handle it. It gave me anxiety, and I can definitely see how it would seriously give people anxiety. It didn't affect me in that way though. Overall, I did, like I said, I enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the fact that there, you know, was that romantic element, but it didn't overtake the story, and it felt realistic. And my biggest complaint about John Green's writing is he has a very beautiful writing. So, you know, that's great. It's the characters that he writes. You know, they speak like they're much older. These are, you know, kids in high school, and I'm sorry, high schoolers just don't articulate as well. And I'm sure that there are some, like, let me be very clear about that. I'm sure that there are high schoolers that articulate extremely well, but you can tell that this is an adult writing a teenager. Like, you can 100% tell that. And so while this is, you know, a YA, and I think that it's really good to see that type of representation in YA, I feel like John Green's writing would do better aged up to like more new adult. So those are my personal feelings on it. So 4 out of 5 stars. I did really like it. And I'm trying to figure out what book I'm going to start next. I'm still in the middle of Tome Infinity and Beyond 2, so I'm trying to get another book finished for that. So I probably won't pick anything else up for Contemporary-A-Thon tonight. We'll see what I feel like picking up in the morning. I think that it's probably going to be the story hour, or maybe I'll start Tampa tonight. I don't know. I haven't decided. I'm just kind of figuring it out as I go. So that's all I have for tonight, and I will check in tomorrow. Hello, so today is Thursday. So today is day 4 of Contemporary-A-Thon. I just finished my second book, which was not originally on my TBR. So let me explain this for just a moment. Okay, so if you watched my original TBR video, you know that for my, I think it was a book for a non-traditional format. I'm pretty sure that's what it was. I had chosen a Ellen Hopkins book because I do own several of hers. However, after that video was filmed and, you know, like going through the internet, Ellen Hopkins has always been known for writing about tough subjects or controversial issues. You know, in perusing the internet, I find this article that talks about a new release from her that's set to come out in 2019. And I will link the article down below. So in the article, it talked about, you know, this new book that she's writing. Let me start off by saying that it is 100% okay for white authors to write diverse characters. However, there are some stories that white authors have no business telling. So the title of this article is it okay for white authors like Ellen Hopkins to profit off of Black pain? And in this article, it talks about what her book is about. And it's called, I think, Sanctuary something. And it's like this futuristic spin on the Underground Railroad. And it's like got a contemporary, you know, vibe to it or whatever. And I'm sorry, I just don't feel like that is her place. And in reading, you know, the description and everything in the book, I don't think that Ellen Hopkins has a right to write a story like that. And she says, I think at one point, you know, she said that she felt like she just had this story and she needed to get it out there, and she wanted to give a voice to the and she wants to give a voice to the voiceless. No, ma'am. You don't get to do that, because guess what you're doing? You're literally talking over everyone, and there are people who have said it more eloquently than I have. I will have links down below so that you can read that for yourself. It's, you know, another one of those things where I have a bunch of books from her on my shelf, and I'm not sure that I want to continue to give her my shelf space. It really just makes me question her motive. Is she writing these tough subjects because, you know, she knows that she can profit off those? You know what I mean? Like, because here's the thing, in our current political climate, I do not think I just cannot understand how a white person could say, oh, I think this is a great idea for me to write. Like, if you feel like you have the story in your heart, that's fine, like, write it, but don't publish it. You shouldn't be able to profit off of something like that. And by putting those stories out there as a white person, once again, you're continuing to speak over the voices that you say are voiceless. So I think that it's complete and utter bullshit. So after I read this, I was like, well, looks like I'm not going to be reading anything by her. And so I decided that I wanted to make sure that whatever I chose, I wanted to make sure that that space was filled by a person of color. After I got back from BookNet Fest, I had a list of book recommendations from various people that had, you know, like talked about different things during panels. And one of the books that Marina's talked about several different times was The Poet X. It is also a book written in verse, and it's about a Dominican American teenager and, you know, really like her experience and really her, you know, like kind of growing up and finding the balance in between dealing with, you know, her mother's religion and, you know, that culture and things like that. And I'm not doing it justice in any way, shape, or form. I actually just finished it, and I wish that I could give this book more than 5 stars. And it was not just written in verse, but I listened to the audiobook, because the audiobook was only like 3.5 hours or something, because it was written in verse. But it is narrated by the author, who is also a slam poet. And so the audio was absolutely beautiful, and the story itself was absolutely beautiful. Like, in tears a couple of times, like chills all over my body. It was just so good, and it was so powerful. It's also Hispanic Heritage Month, which is another reason that I did decide to choose this to fill this prompt for Contemporary-A-Thon. You guys, it was so fucking good. I'm pretty sure that Marianez has a review up on her channel, and I know that this book felt very personal to her, and I feel like she can do more justice speaking about it than I ever could. So I'm going to be linking that down below so that you can go in and watch that and really get a better sense of what this is about, you know, and why this book is important, because it was so fucking good. Definitely in the top books that I've read this year, and for being so short, it was just so powerful. Like, just I can't do it justice, but you need to read it. The Poet X. Read the book. It's so good. So I have no idea what I'm going to be starting next. I think, you know, we've got through the weekend, but I'm off tomorrow and I'm working the rest of the weekend. So I might start Tampa tonight. I don't really know. I'm trying to figure it out. Tomorrow is the last day of Tome Infinity, so I might like start something later tonight, but I might just try and see if I can finish out my TBR for Tome Infinity instead of reading anything else. I don't know. We'll see. So that's what I have, and I'll check in later. Alright, so here we are to wrap Contemporary-A-Thon up. It is several days past the end of Contemporary-A-Thon, but I've been working and I just have not had the time to like really sit down and do this. So for all of you people who like worked full time and daily vlogged, like I salute you, because I don't have the mental fortitude for all that. But okay, so for this readathon, I ended up reading 4 books, and I read a decent variety, and I did very much enjoy most of the things that I read. So let's talk about them. I know that I kind of like gave my thoughts as I was finishing some of them. The very last one that I finished, no, even I think the last 2 that I finished, I didn't really get a chance to talk about because I sucked at vlogging this time around, so I'm really sorry. But just with my work schedule and everything, and just how tired I have been feeling, I would remember to film a clip, and then I would like start doing something else, because I don't know, I'm not very good at this sometimes. So the first book that I ended up picking up was Turtles All the Way Down by John Green, and I had little to no expectations going into this book. Well, no, I'm not gonna say I had no expectations, because I did put that I figured that it was probably gonna be a 5-star read. And this is a book about a teenage girl who, I'm gonna put this down because I don't feel like holding it. So it's a book about a teenage girl who is dealing with obsessive compulsive disorder and intrusive thoughts and things like that. First of all, let me say that I ended up giving this book 4 stars. It wasn't quite 5 stars, but it was 4 stars. I did really very much enjoy it. There were a lot of things that I liked about it. First of all, I can't speak for the obsessive compulsive rep that is in this book, because that's not something that I struggle with. However, I do deal very much with anxiety and things like thought spirals, and that's something that they talk pretty extensively about in that book, and so in that way I very, very much related to that. So I will also say that if that is something that you struggle with, you know, be very aware that that's something that's heavily discussed in this book, and that may be triggering to you. And I liked what it had to say about different friendships. However, the one thing that I did not really care for is, I love John Green's writing, but I think he needs to age up his writing, because the children or teenagers in this book do not talk like teenagers. I don't know a single teenager that talks like that. Like, stop. I think the closest to an actual teenager was the friend whose name I can't remember right now. Maybe I'm just out of touch with teenagers now, which I guess I should be since I'm almost 30, but whatever. But I don't know, that's just how I felt about it. But overall, I did really enjoy it. as a whole. So, okay, so the next book that I read earlier in this vlog, I already talked about why I picked up The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. So I'm not gonna go into that anymore, but I just absolutely loved this story. It is such a beautiful story and it's told so beautifully, and I did listen to the audio, and so if you have a chance to pick it up via audio, you really need to, because the story is told in verse and the author herself is a slam poet, and so you can imagine just how magical that is translated from her words on the page to her words actually speaking. And I, like, so many times just like chills all over, like I get chills just thinking about how amazing it was. So, and I've seen this book recommended a ton of times, and I've seen a ton of people reading it lately, and it makes me so excited. I know that there are people that can be much more eloquent than I can, so I'm gonna do some work and I'm gonna find some reviews from other Latinx booktubers down below, so you can click that and read those. I really want to lift those voices up than rather me sitting here talking about it. It is a beautiful story, but I think people can speak to its importance in a much more eloquent way than I can, just because, you know, I'm a white person over here. But it really is a beautiful story. And the audiobook is only 3 hours long, and I'm pretty sure that it's on Hoopla right now. And so if your library has access to Hoopla, like, I encourage you so much to check this book out. It was so good. The next book that I picked up was The Story Hour. This is by Fruity Umragar. So the author is Indian American. I had to look that up because I wasn't sure. And this is a book about a woman who, and again, I'm gonna put this down because I don't feel like holding it. This is a story about an Indian immigrant, and she came to this country in an arranged marriage, not even an arranged marriage. And she came to this country with her husband. She hasn't had any contact with her family in the last 6 years since she moved here, because of the way that things are with her husband. And from the get-go, the husband seems like not a very good human being for multiple reasons. That story is a lot deeper than it's originally made it out to be, as you know, you discover as you go through the book. So it's very layered in that way. Nothing is really what it seems to be on the surface. You know, she's struggling with really being alone, and that leads to her within the first chapter of the book trying to commit suicide, because she is just so alone and she's so depressed, and you know, she doesn't know what to do with herself anymore. And from that incident, she starts therapy with a psychologist named Maggie. And as she goes through this therapy with Maggie, like, their relationship really develops. They really kind of develop a friendship, you know, through these hour-long sessions. And that's why it's called The Story Hour, because throughout the book, each of the characters, they tell different stories. It really talks about how through those stories, you know, we really show ourselves. We show who we are in the telling of those stories, right? I really loved the characters in this book, and there are certain things that I really loved, as I really enjoyed the way that Lakshmi's and Maggie's relationship progressed throughout the book. There were a couple of things that I did not care for. There's one thing in particular that I didn't care for. Let me start off by saying that, right? And I can't really talk about what I didn't care for in it without, like, really spoiling the book, so I'm not going to talk about it. The only thing that I'll say is there is an element of, like, adultery within this book that I felt like was almost trying to be justified, and I couldn't see it. And so I didn't really enjoy that piece of it. But overall, like, I thought it was very beautifully written. I thought that the pacing was well done. I thought that the characters were well developed. You know, each of the characters, as you go through, every main character, you know, really does go through an arc. Nobody stays static. Everybody really grows. So, you know, for that reason, I really enjoyed it. So I ended up giving it 4 stars. Like I said, I took off that 1 star just because of the one thing that I already mentioned, but okay. And the very last book that I read is Tampa by Alyssa Netting. Don't read this book, okay? I'm telling you right now, don't read this book. If I could burn it in a fire, I might. Maybe. Gave it 1 star. It's my second 1-star rating of the year, all right? Let's talk about that. Second, I read 103 books as of this very second, and I rated 2 of them 1 stars, and this was one of them. So let's talk about it. And I'm just gonna go ahead and spoil the whole thing for you so you don't have to read it, all right? Like, I'm just gonna throw it out there. So if for some reason you are dying to read this book, you may just want to skip over this until I get to the very end, because I'm gonna spoil the whole thing for you. Okay, so we follow this woman whose name I can't remember, because why would I remember it? But apparently she had like her sexual awakening at like the age of 14 with another 14-year-old, okay? And for that reason, she can only find herself attracted to 14-year-old boys. Graphic sexual content with her and 14-year-old boys. Like pornographic, honestly. And there's no point. Like, I really don't know what she was trying to do here, because it's a woman coming on to boys and instead of vice versa. And I think that she was trying to be like deep with social commentary or something having to do with, because the whole thing, like, she becomes a teacher so she can start a relationship with a 14-year-old boy, okay? That's terrifying to think that there are people like that in the world. So she does that. Like, she's extremely manipulative, and she's just a shit human being, right? And so, you know, you continue on the story, and she continues to manipulate people. It continues being graphic. Like, I only really read like maybe half of this book. I started like skimming through and just like, you know, trying to keep up with the plot so I could get to the end, because I wanted to see how it ended. So of course she gets caught, because why wouldn't she? But nothing happens to her. There's no consequences for her actions whatsoever. And I don't know if it was supposed to be like, okay, well, look at yourself, and are you, would you be as upset about this if it were, you know, like role reversal? It was a dude that got off. Well, fuck yeah, I would. So I don't understand what the point in this commentary was, right? It doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. Men shouldn't get off whenever they have sex with underage people, and neither should women. Like, I don't understand. They should, you know, go to jail, become a registered sex offender. Don't live within so far of a school, or, you know, like, it's so gross. It's so gross. The whole thing was so fucking gross. And I just don't see the point in which it was written. If you were really trying to write some kind of like social commentary, and I read their reviews on Goodreads, and they were either like 1 to 2 stars, or they were 5 stars, and they're like, oh, this is brilliant. And I'm like, what was brilliant about it? Sex with 14-year-olds? I don't get it. I don't get it. So don't read this book, because it's gross. Like, it's really, really gross. Also, it's called Tampa because it takes place in Florida, and that's the only reason that it's called Tampa. So let me step down off my soapbox, because that was just, it was so fucking gross. Okay. All right. So I've been talking for way too long. So that was my Contemporary-A-Thon wrap up. Managed to read 4 books, which isn't bad. I tend to save my contemporary reads for Contemporary-A-Thon, because I don't read a whole heck of a lot of contemporary, even though I have a whole shelf down there for it, but whatever. Okay, so thank you once again to Julie, Natasha, and Chelsea for hosting this readathon. I look forward to the next round. As always, if you like what you see and you want to see more, make sure you click thumbs up or hit subscribe if you have not already. Thank you guys so very much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.